Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Developing a Proper Worldview. This is going to be episode number 57, and this should be the last part of the trilogy, America's Secret Beginnings by Chris Pinto. And so this is the section where we're showing the American Empire and how its foundations are rooted in Gnosticism / Luciferianism occultic beginnings, and this trilogy of documentaries does a phenomenal job of showing that, just how America is rooted in the occult, and our leaders especially have been brought up in that Gnostic Luciferianism. And so I'll skip the long introduction this time, I think, because sometimes I can get pretty long-winded in these intros. But just as a refresher, if you happen to be catching this video just randomly, these are done in order. They should be watched in that order because we're building a worldview. We're developing this worldview, hence the title of the series. And so it's really, really important that you have the previous foundations laid before you just jump into this, namely the gospel, that this entire worldwide conspiracy is foretold in the scriptures, that the Bible told us these things would come to pass, that this is God's plan for the world. This is part of his redemptive history to bring about the return of Jesus. And you really have to have a spiritual, you have to be born again in order to understand this properly. And you have to have spiritual eyes to understand these spiritual events. While these events are taking place in the physical realm, that we're seeing these things, we're seeing a push towards a one world government, that we're seeing a push towards an anti-Christian moral, an anti-Christian ethic. In order to understand why and how these things are coming about, you really have to have that biblical foundation. You have to understand that this is prophecy, that this is supposed to happen, that this is the way that the Lord told us things would happen. And so you have to have that gospel. You have to be born again. Jesus said, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear." And he said, "The words I speak unto you are spiritual words." So you have to have spiritual understanding. So that was part one of our series. Then part two, we looked at how evolution, the theory of evolution, kind of undergirds this entire thing. It gives people an intellectual reason to deny the truth that they intuitively know, that there is a creator God. Once they can grasp onto that fallacy, once they can grasp on to that lie, that things spontaneously generated, then they're free to develop their own ideas. That there is no authority then. There's no biblical basis. You reject the scriptures then. If you reject the God of the scriptures, of course you're going to hold the scriptures lightly and not even consider them, and then you're open to all sorts of deception. And that's exactly what the devil wants. That's what the demonic realm wants, because these spiritual entities, these fallen beings, these demons, communicate with occultic organizations through seances, through rituals, through witchcraft, whatever, convincing these people that they are speaking truth, that they're ascended masters or fourth dimensional aliens or whatever it is. And because they don't have that biblical understanding, because they've rejected the authority of the Bible, they've rejected the God of the Bible, they're open to those deceptions. And so you find that the people in power are brought up under this influence and are leading the world in the direction that these fallen angels communicate to them, bringing this world into the New World Order, the Luciferian Antichrist system. And then part three is showing how America is part of that America is corrupt at its foundations, that America is an occult society, that it was based on occultism, and America is really being used to drive home the New World Order system. America's like the muscle behind the machine. America's the mechanism by which this New World Order system is being established. And so we saw that with the founding fathers. Now, most recently in this third part, the what's the name of this third part? Eye of the Phoenix, I think. Yeah, and we're seeing, yeah, it's Eye of the Phoenix. We're seeing how occult masters like Nicholas Roerich were tied into, like, was it Colonel Mandenhouse, Roosevelt's advisor, and Manly P. Hall, high-level Freemason, Roosevelt. We're seeing all these connections between them, what the heck was Roosevelt's Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Defense, or whatever that guy's name is, who was high into it. We just looked at it the last video. I can't remember his name. It escapes my mind. I'm sure we'll hear his name mentioned again, but really we're seeing how around the era of World War II, this New World Order system is like in full gear. The occult ties to the White House and to politics is really steering the ship, so to speak. And it's interesting. One thing I wanted to share, and I've thought about this often throughout my spiritual life, is the book of Daniel talks about two things occurring at the end of the age. Like, Daniel was given a vision and was told to seal up the vision until the end. And then there was two specific things mentioned that would occur at the end: an increase of knowledge and an increase of travel. And so, like, using that as a base, looking at the history of the world and going, okay, is there any point in time where knowledge and travel, like, really increased? And yeah, there is. The turn of the last century, around 1900 to 1945, wherever, 1950s, which is what this video is getting into, that era there. Prior to that, travel was done by ship or horses or walking. Like, travel was very limited. But right around that time, the turn of the century, the invention of the engine, the invention of automobiles, trains, airplanes, all came into being, where all of a sudden travel, you could travel the entire world. Fast forward to now, where, like, I could be in Japan in 12 hours. I can go get on a plane and be there. You can order something from Amazon and have it shipped from all sorts of different places in the world and be at your doorstep in a day or two. So we've definitely seen an increase of travel. Also, knowledge increased at that same time. Prior to that time, knowledge was, like, most of society was probably illiterate. The printing press came around in the 1500s, so books started to pick up steam. But people were really limited to their knowledge to basically their own city or their own area. Like, maybe you had the local newspaper, but you really had no way of knowing what's going on around the world, until all of a sudden we had telephones and radios and computers and television, and that all just started to increase right around the same time that travel started to increase. So for me, that's a sign that we really are in the last days. And I don't think it's a coincidence that around that same time is when the New World Order really picked up steam, where all of a sudden you had social security numbers where everybody could be tracked. We started to move away from a cash gold society to a cashless society. So, like, checks were introduced, and then credit cards, and then now RFID chips. So, like, that all started to increase as well. You also had the world wars. After World War I, they tried to start the League of Nations to get a world government. That failed. After World War II, they tried again with the United Nations, got that established, although it wasn't in full power. But things have been moving in that direction ever since. So you had the increase in knowledge, increase in technology, a massive move towards the New World Order, which I think is just quickening every day. In my lifetime, there's been great advancements. You also have, like Timothy talked about, how people would act in the last days. They'd be lovers of self, lovers of pleasure rather than God. all these different things. We've seen that. So the morality, the moral fiber of society has greatly decreased, to where now, like, society just accepts debauchery, and if you dare speak out against debauchery, you're called evil. So we have all these things coming together right around the turn of the last century, right around the 1900s. Really seemed to pick up in the 40s, around World War II. You also had the reestablishment of Israel as a nation. There's a lot of Old Testament prophecies that apply to national Israel, and Israel didn't exist for like almost 2,000 years, from the time of Rome up until the 1940s, when in a day the United Nations recreated the nation of Israel, and that's miraculous. Like, usually if a country is conquered or overtaken, it assimilates into the culture that has taken it over. That's why you don't have Medes walking around. You don't have Babylonians walking around. They assimilated into the cultures. You don't have Canaanites. You know, they became part of the culture that took them over. And the fact that the Jews were able to maintain their identity without a country for thousands of years, and then what was it, May 1st, 45, 47, something like that, Israel was reformed. You know, just like that, they had their own country again. So you have all these things that, to me, show that we are in the last days. What the Bible foretells happening with the New World Order system, with the Luciferian system, is occurring within our lifetime, within our generation. We're seeing it happen. For the last 100 years it's been happening, which would mean that we're at the very end of it, I would think. So we're seeing all these things culminate. You also have things like, and we'll get into all this later down the line, I think, like the UN's Agenda 2030, that they want to have this New World Order established by the year 2030, that they want to roll out implantable microchips, that they want to move into a cashless society. Like, all these things are stated goals by world powers, and it's their goal is to have it happen like now in our lifetime. Like, the technology exists, the ability exists, and they have stated goals of making it happen. Odds are we're going to see it. Now, the Lord could delay. You know, it could be another 100, 200 years. We don't know. The times belong to God. But by the way it looks, this is certainly occurring within our lifetime. So just another reason to have this worldview established, so that you can really see things unfolding and be on alert. Jesus told us over and over again to watch, you know, and that's a command to be on guard, to be alert, to be aware, to know what's going on, to know the seasons, to know the time, so that it doesn't catch us off guard. I said I wouldn't do a long intro, and then I did. Let's just jump back into this. Like I say, we've got maybe about 50 minutes left of this video, maybe an hour. So Lord willing, we'll finish it up here tonight. All right, here we go.
Despite Rorick's international mystique and influence in the Oval Office, he eventually suffered a sudden and sharp decline. While searching for seeds and grasses for the Department of Agriculture, he was also heavily involved with the politics of Central Asia. Buff Perry believes that prior to his fall, Rorick was working to amalgamate the countries of Asia into a united Buddhist theocracy that would ultimately be joined to a one-world government.
In Nicholas Rorick's efforts to bring about an amalgamated, if you will, theocratic Buddhist nation that would have consisted of Manchuria, Mongolia, Tibet, part of China, perhaps part of India, perhaps some of Siberia, he was working with the Tashi Lama, who was suspected by China, particularly, and to this day very much suspected by China, as being subversive to the stability of the region. And as a result of this, Rorschach became associated with accusations of espionage.
Perry's further suspicion is that, at least for a time, Rorschach's political efforts were on behalf of FDR's New Deal administration. We recorded the following conversation with Perry in December of 2008. So we've got the what nobody's talking about right now in American media, the North American Union, right, through the Free Trade Agreement, the European Union, which is known about, but we never hear about it on the news.
Right.
And now there's
What's crazy is, like, just a few years ago, the people of Great Britain voted to get out of the EU, and like that never happened. And now that the pandemic occurred, that's just kind of disappeared from the news as well. Like, that's I believe that's the foundation of this New World Order system. Like, the plan is to have smaller areas for the North American Union, which is why, if you ever heard about like that super highway that was supposed to be built from Mexico through America up into Canada, why there was resistance on that, because that would have been part of this North American Union. It would have just really connected the three nations in a way that hadn't been done before. It's part of why we have like free trade agreements to bring nations together. It's what the Trilateral Commission's goal is. It's what Bilderberg Group's goal is. It's what the Council of Foreign Relations goal is to have these different unions, European Union, North American Union, South American Union, or whatever, the Asian Union. And then the idea is, once those are formed, it's a lot simpler to just merge that all into a one world government. I don't know if that's the way it's going to do. The Club of Rome, which is another occult organization, has an idea of 10 providences of the world, like different sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but all like unified. And like, really, the world is kind of sort of already unified in a world government with the UN and the World Banking System. Like, almost all nations are indebted to the World Banking System, so they're already under the control of this Illuminati New World Order system. There's just not an official New World Order, but that's also part of the global warming agenda, is to create a global carbon tax. And then they'll say, like, from that, they're going to say we need a global government, a global, some sort of authority to collect and enforce that tax. So that's why that agenda is pushed so hard. We've really seen a unified world through like World Health Organization and things like that with the vaccines. So like their entire agenda is to continually push things towards a unified world. How that's going to play out, what it's going to look like, I don't know. If it's going to be the unions, if it'll be the Club of Rome plan, or if it's just going to be a behind the scenes united through the World Banking System. Or, you know, they've already got the UN in place to just, like, I remember when we went to war with Iraq, I think, or was it the Afghanistan war? I can't remember. Must have been Iraq, where Bush had to get permission from the UN, and like that sketch, like like we're supposed to be a sovereign entity, you know, where all of a sudden you're having to get permission from the United Nations as a nation to do things. They're talking about having United Nations ran courts of law where American citizens can be subject to this world body. There's a lot of craziness out there. We're not as far away from that as you would think. The New World Order operates out of order, out of chaos. They recognize the psychology of the human mind, that when a person is in an emotional, frantic state, they're really easily manipulated. If a person is scared, they get tunnel vision, and they just want to get away from the fear. And so anybody that can offer a solution, that's grasped onto and followed. Not to mention, like, critical thinking goes away in high emotional states. So they bombard us through their propaganda with fear. They'll either create a crisis or just wait for one to happen. And then when everybody's in a panic, and they'll use the media to just stir that panic up to a fevered pitch. And then when everybody's in that state of panic, they offer a New World Order agenda as the solution. So, and people grasp onto it. The authority grasps onto it. The media promotes it over and over and over again, and that's the way we go. Forget what my point was, but so like in order for us to have a real global government, it wouldn't take much. One tragic event, maybe a little bit more, because America still holds on to, or a portion of America still holds on to its sovereignty. But that's another reason that the immigration is so big. You have third world people that don't understand the concepts of American freedom and don't cling to American sovereignty and don't have that nationalistic sense. The more of those you can get in and voting, or the more you can get them in as the majority of the population, the more willing the nation as a whole is going to be to accept a union with the rest of the world.
This Asian Union, it seems like Rorschach was being used by the American government to lay the foundation for or to bring about an Asian Union.
You got it. That I accept wholeheartedly, and I think it when you read it, the details, factual details, it's inescapable that America saw in Rorschach the capability of creating this great Asian Union. And he was supported by American intelligence. Rorschach was supported when he was trying to bring together that great new nation. Who was he reporting to? He was reporting to the American consulates in China.
The official story seems to be that once Rorschach was accused of being a spy, he fell out of favor with his two greatest supporters, Henry Wallace and Louis Horch. But what about Rorschach's so-called Stone of Destiny? This holy grail that he claimed was in his possession, supposedly buried inside the cornerstone of the Master Building. Whether the stone or some part of it is there or not, Buff Perry has come to the conclusion that Rorschach's artifact was a cunningly devised fable. Just for our audience, you don't buy into the idea of the mystical, magical nature of this stone.
Absolutely not.
And you think it was a showpiece fabricated by the Rorschachs, really to beguile guys like Henry Wallace, it seems like.
Yes. I do. I do.
When we first interviewed Buff several years ago, he seemed to have the impression that the Stone of Destiny was the same stone that Rorschach had in his possession. Today, he believes they are not at all the same thing, and that perhaps this is what caused Wallace to become disillusioned with his guru.
I think Wallace felt perhaps deceived when he's anticipating the arrival of what he called the Stone of Destiny in correspondence, and then ends up with, nothing in effect.
Nevertheless, Perry still believes that Jacob's Pillow Stone, which is said to be the real Stone of Destiny, was brought to America by the Jacobites and may have been recovered by the French-Canadian explorer La Vérendrye in the 1700s.
The La Vérendrye stone is, clearly has some association with the Stone of Destiny.
But the whereabouts of the stone today are still unknown. As a Jewish researcher, the real stone holds special significance for Buff Perry. According to the Jewish belief, the Pillow Stone of Jacob is one of the original artifacts that was kept in King Solomon's temple in Jerusalem.
The stone, variously called the Stone of Destiny, Foundation Stone, Pillow Stone of Jacob, and other titles, is expected and is necessary to be in Jerusalem for the final construction of the final temple. The Jews believe that that temple, and not all Jews, but most of the Jews today, active in rabbinical orders that are preparing to, conduct all the rituals in the final temple as we speak, believe that all articles that were in Solomon's temple have to be returned if they're known to exist. If they're not known to exist, then it's a different matter. But all those that are known to exist must be returned and would then go into use again in the final temple.
Buff believes that Nicholas and Helena Roerich aligned their Chintamani stone with the Stone of Destiny in order to sensationalize their own cause. But others continue to believe that Roerich's stone was from the stars and had real power. The Roerichs themselves were known for tapping into the supernatural realm.
The Roerichs were particularly eccentric.
Helena Roerich spent much of her lifetime channeling a spirit that called itself Master Mariah, the same spirit that inspired Madame Blavatsky to declare that Lucifer was God. We told you earlier about the letter from Zena Fosdick that describes the contents of the Rajput casket placed inside the cornerstone of the Master Building. But we neglected to mention a few of the items that Buff Perry talked about.
But there are all kinds of other ingredients. There are different fabrics and coins. And
what's the thing? Talk about the coins again.
Well, these are, in some cases, coins that materialized out of what would be considered occultation, out of the other world in different meetings and sessions that were held by the Roerichs. And I'm not saying this off the cuff or because I heard it from someone else. These are recorded memoirs of Helena and Nicholas Roerich.
And of course, many of the people who are into the New Age are into astral projection and in contact with these spirit beings, and there really are spirit beings out there. They refer to them as the Masters of Wisdom, or the Great White Brotherhood, or the Enlightened Ones, and they believe that they are guiding society. These are actually demonic forces.
Just as a caution, any spiritual voice is demonic. The Lord speaks through His Word. He has given us His written Word so that there can be no deception. We have the authoritative, foundational, objective truth of the Word. It says in the Scriptures, He has spoken in these last days through His Son. His Son is the last medium of communication, Jesus Christ, and His disciples writing His words. It's all Scripture is given by God, given by inspiration of God. It's God breathed. The Word of God is our authority. Anything outside of that is not the way God communicates. God has communicated this through His Word so that there can be no deception. You have the written Word, black and white truth. So any people talk, in our society we hear about ghosts, people talking to their dead family members. That's all demonic. It's aliens. It's demonic. Any source of spiritual, eternal knowledge coming from an outside source of the Scriptures is demonic. That's not the way God communicates. He's not sending angels to talk to you. He's not communicating through statues or gargoyles or any of that stuff. It's the Scriptures alone.
And demonic beings, and of course they can materialize and disappear. The average individual says, oh, that can't be true, and yet it is true. And when you talk to the people who are dealing with this, they come in contact with this many times. They have accessed this other dimension, which is truly a demonic dimension. And of course, tragically, it's becoming increasingly apparent here in America as we turn our back on God, and we're not really a secular society. We've gone from being a Christian society to a secular society, and now a society dominated by the occult forces, of which are intent upon ruling the world.
If it's true that the Roerichs were in contact with the spirit realm, is it then possible that these same powers could have somehow influenced the design of the dollar bill.
That's why it's wicked seances, fortune tellers, Ouija boards. It's all forbidden by God. His word is your authority.
While the history surrounding FDR's administration is disturbing, there is said to be a darker level, and one that is openly satanic, in the design of the dollar bill. These allegations begin with a group founded in Bavaria in 1776, known as the Illuminati. The order was founded by a man named Adam Weishaupt, with the alleged purpose of perfecting society. The symbolism of the dollar bill, Adam Weishaupt, do you really think it has anything to do with the Illuminati, in your opinion?
Is the Illuminati to be defined as Freemasons and Rosicrucians and other secret society members? If that's the case, then yes, I believe the symbol on the dollar bill, the truncated pyramid, is directly related to the Illuminati, because Rorschach was the Illuminati.
In the 18th century, the original order was thought to have a bloodthirsty agenda, and it was believed that they secretly worshiped Lucifer.
So we give the term Illuminati in like a general sense to the New World Order. My understanding of it, it's not Jay-Z and Beyonce. They can call themselves Illuminati. They're probably just low-level occultists. Like they don't have any real power or influence. The way that structure works, and it's not your neighbor that's a Freemason isn't part of the Illuminati. He's a deceived, low-level person. Like, so the way that power structure works, from my understanding, is you have all the various different occult organizations entry level, whether that's Jehovah's Witness, Mormonism, Freemasonry, Catholicism, anything that's unbiblical. Any source of truth that's not biblical. And then from that, there's advancements. So you have the different levels in the Mormon temple. You become, you can't access certain parts of the temple until you're a higher level. In Freemasonry, there's the degrees. In Catholicism, there's, lay, and then there's priests, and then there's bishops and cardinals and popery and the Jesuit order, things like that. So there's degrees. So you move up in those degrees. And then you have like a religious arm and you have a government arm. And so you have like the next level up, you have Skull and Bones, Bohemian Club, all these different, well, that would be the religious kind of mixing with the political. I wish it was diagrammed. I've seen a lot of diagrams out there. Sorry about that. I've seen diagrams out there, but I haven't seen one that does it really justice as far as my understanding goes. But each level up you progress, you get to like Council on Foreign Relations, the Royal Institute, things like that. And then above that, there's the Committee of 300, or the Olympiads. Above that, there's a Council of 33. Above that is where what is properly defined, I think, is the Illuminati, which is 13 families. There's 13 controlling families that are at that peak level, that control everything. They run all of the industry. They run the banks. They own it all. Rothschilds, Rockefellers, DuPonts, Kennedys, things like that. Those types of names. There's 13 bloodlines. That's how they maintain their power. It's familial. You have to be born into that. So like, I don't think Rorschach was Illuminati, or anybody who claims to be Illuminati. No, you have to be born into that. You have to be born into the royal family or the Rothschild family. And then above them is the principalities and powers. And then, of course, that peak of the pyramid, that all-seeing eye of Horus, that's Lucifer. And so it trickles down. it's a structure, it's a control system. So your low level people, or even high level, like there's Barack Obama is probably nobody. The Clintons seem to be somebody. I don't know where they would be on that pyramid. Maybe like Committee of 300 or something. Above them, Kissinger, Brzezinski. Those are probably like, and I don't know this for sure, but those are probably like Council of 33. Maybe they ain't even that high. The Council of 33 is probably people we've never even heard of. But I don't know what started that. But anyways, the 1776 Bavarian Illuminati was a Jesuit-controlled. Weishaupt was a Jesuit-trained man who wanted to take the Jesuit ideas and principles, bring it into politics, take over the world. He was exposed, so his system of control went underground through Freemason lodges and Rosicrucians, and so that's what Buff Perry was talking about. But the real Illuminati, at least when I say Illuminati, I'm referring to those 13 families, those ones that own the banks and through that control all industry. The real rulers of the world.
George Washington warned about the Illuminati in his letters, while Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin were thought to be members of its inner circle. Which brings us to our next speaker. He claims to have been raised in a modern Illuminati family that dates back to the 1700s. He says that, as a child, he was made to practice black magic and witchcraft. His name is Doc Marquis.
So we're going to get into Doc Marquis a lot later down the line. I've got a 6-disc, more than 6-disc, because some of those are 2 parts. It'll be a lengthy series, and I gotta pre-watch them because I haven't watched them all. But I don't know if the guy calls himself a brother. I have no reason to doubt him. Man, what do I want to say about this? There's 2 guys, Doc Marquis and Bill Schneebelen, that both claim to be born-again believers. Like I say, I have no reason to doubt that. And if they are born-again believers, then they wouldn't lie. So the information they present is true. The claims they make to have attained that information is so outrageous that it's hard to believe. But again, I have no reason to doubt it. It's just it'd be like, meeting somebody that says, oh yeah, I'm friends with Donald Trump and I live next to George Clooney and I was part of the space program and I know Elon Musk, he's a good friend of mine, and it's like all these different things that are like so outrageous and like things you wouldn't normally hear, that it's like, wow, man, it's hard to believe. So there is a skeptical part of my brain, but then it's like I say, there's no reason to doubt them. And if especially like I say, if they are a born again believer, then they're speaking the truth. Let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. A born again believer is not going to just outright lie without sorrow and contrition, and they're going to come and the Holy Spirit's going to cause them to confess, man, I was lying about that. It's just not going to happen. So there's just a part of me that's always been skeptical about the way they've attained their information, but the information they present, I believe, is true, regardless of how outrageous it sounds. You're gonna, and we'll get into all that. I've got several Schneebelen videos we're gonna watch, several Marquis videos we're gonna watch. So you're gonna see what I'm talking about. But like I say, there's no reason to doubt it. Everything they say fits the biblical narrative, fits the worldview, fits this New World Order system. It's truthful information. So I guess I'll just throw that out there as a precaution as we start to get into these guys.
My family goes back into the Illuminati all the way back to 1789.
Of course, we have no way of either confirming or denying Doc's claims, but it is worth noting that he has acted as an expert on the occult for law enforcement and the FBI. According to his publisher, in the past he has appeared on and consulted for Geraldo Rivera and Oprah Winfrey, and for shows like Hard Copy, Inside Edition, and Unsolved Mysteries. Doc has been a Christian since 1979, but he says that part of his upbringing in a family that worshiped Lucifer was to be taught about the secret Illuminati symbols of the dollar bill, and that understanding them begins with the Rothschild dynasty.
Meyer Amschel Rothschild had made a very interesting and profound statement. He said, "Allow me to control and issue the money of a nation, and I care not who writes its laws." And he was right.
Meyer Amschel Rothschild is called the founding father of international finance. In 2005, Forbes magazine ranked him 7th on their list of the 20 most influential businessmen of all time.
All this happened back in 1776, and this was during May 1st and shortly thereafter. The significance behind that is that on May 1st, 1776, Dr. Adam Weishaupt, who was a devout Jesuit priest, who was given the chair of the professorship of religious studies at Ingolstadt University, was approached by Meyer Amschel Bauer, who would later change his last name to Rothschild, along with 12 of his most financially influential friends. They knew Weishaupt at that particular time was not only a genius when it came to the occult world, but Weishaupt also had an axe to grind, because it was the Catholic Church that just recently defrocked him. He was no longer a Jesuit priest, and he was going to send a message to them, to the monarchies of Europe, and to all other people who would try to have their will over his.
What Rothschild and Weishaupt came up with was a plan to destroy the old world system of government through monarchies and the church, and to set up a new world order in its place. This is said to be the great plan of all the secret societies.
So what happened? Meyer Amschel Bauer approached Weishaupt and basically told him, "We know you've got the occult knowledge and genius to put it all together. We've got the money. You do it, we'll back it." Just to paraphrase what really happened. So in 1773, Weishaupt started creating what had never been created before. The idea of Illuminism had always been around, ever since the days of Babylon, with the co-founders of being that Nimrod and Semiramis. But no one had ever been able to actualize it. However, May 1st, 1776, the Order of the Illuminati had become a reality under the auspices of Dr. Adam Weishaupt. Now, like other nations, orders, countries and such, they have their two great seals. The Order of the Illuminati does. Those two seals can be found on the back of a $1 bill. People mistake those to be the two great seals of the United States of America. They are not. Those are the two seals of the Order of the Illuminati. And I'm going to explain it to you. In order to understand the seal itself, we have to first take a look at every single thing that composites it. We look at the first part of it on our left, which would be the truncated pyramid one. Above it is a 13-letter Latin expression that says Annuit Corruptus, and directly underneath the base of the pyramid is a 3-word Latin expression, which is Novus Ordo Seclorum. If you were to look up the word, let's say work, in the English dictionary, you're going to find at least 50 different meanings for it. It is the same thing in Latin. Different words have different meanings. They have more than one meaning. The word seclorum, one of the definitive meanings is secular. Something that is secular is of the world. So it is proper, very proper, to translate the bottom as New World Order, the Novus Ordo Seclorum. The whole of it is saying, announcing the birth of a new world order. This would be Dr. Adam Weishaupt himself, the very first head of the Order of the Illuminati. It was Weishaupt who had himself come up with a 7-part plan to create what he called the Novus Ordo Seclorum, or the New World Order. This is the person responsible for it. The interesting thing about the front of the dollar bill is that there are 4 huge ones. There is one in every single corner. Now if we look at every single one of them, they each have an oval around it, except for the top right hand one. Now if we look at this blow up version of it, you will find there is no oval. This is a shield that is surrounding the one. Now, the reason there was a shield here is because this is very similar to the original shield that was given to the Rothschild family when Baron Meyer Amschel Rothschild had become knighted in England and received the lordship. If we look across the top of this shield, all the way to the left-hand side, it drops down and forms a crescent moon. It's a crescent moon because it represents the female goddess in the occult world. At the bottom of that shield, of that lunar moon, you will see the owl. It is very obvious once you take a good look at that part of the crescent moon. And it is the same Illuminati owl that is being worshipped at the Bohemian Grove in California by those members of the Bohemian Grove, where presidents, premiers, kings and queens and heads of nations throughout this world have met. You can tell just by looking at this photo, that is a 40-foot owl. It is made out of oak, and that the worshippers are surrounding that fire pit around that altar, which is easily reflected in the lake around them. This is definitely the owl of the Illuminati.
The rituals performed at the Bohemian Grove are occult and idolatrous. One of them, called the cremation of care, is supposed to be a mock human sacrifice, though some suggest that real killings take place. When President Nixon was there, he commented about the extreme homosexual environment at this all-male boys' club. Among other powerful American leaders who have been spotted at the Grove are Ronald Reagan, Dwight Eisenhower, Jimmy Carter, Newt Gingrich, and George Bush Jr. and Sr.
There's so much to cover there. I have whole documentaries about the dollar bill. Doc Marquis, we're gonna watch that one. There's another documentary by Alex Jones called The Dark Secrets of Bohemian Grove. He snuck into that club with a hidden camera and filmed the ritual, the cremation of care. I don't remember if we're going to watch that one or not. It's kind of boring. It's a lot of like just handheld, because he had like a hidden camera. So it's a lot of it's boring. It's him walking through the grove, talking to the different people, you know, because it's shooting from this angle, you can't really see any faces or anything. It's a really boring documentary, so I don't know if we'll watch it. The information about the ceremony is pretty eye-opening. So for that purpose, we may watch it. The Bible talks about how they've seared their consciences, meaning that they've dulled their conscience. They've like if you sear something with a flame, you sear your hand, it kills the nerves so that you can't feel anymore. And like repetitive wickedness dulls the conscience. Like everybody has a conscience. That's one of the evidences of our Creator. We're born with this conscience of knowing right from wrong. The more you do wrong, the less active your conscience becomes. You sear that conscience. Well, when they do the cremation of care, they're burning their care, they're searing their conscience, and that's why they do a sacrifice. They commit murder. Now they say it's in effigy. They just use a fake body, but the whole ceremony is meant to dull the conscience. So you have all these world leaders performing rituals dressed up like druids, occult druids, searing their conscience, dulling their consciences so that they can do wicked deeds without that guilt, without their casting off the reins of God, as it says in Psalm 2. So that's important. Another thing on the dollar, and we'll discuss all that when we watch that video, but I think Rothschild means red shield. So that shield around the one is the Rothschild symbol. The owl is a symbol of the Illuminati. It's able to see in the dark. It has hidden wisdom. It knows things that others can't see, which is Gnosticism. The one they worship at the Grove is called Moloch. I believe Moloch is a demon god in the Old Testament, a Canaanite demon god. So just even when they come out of there and they say, "Oh, it was just all pretend," like you're pretending to do Luciferian worship, worshiping a large owl called Moloch, even if that is pretend. That's such why are our world leaders doing this? And then Bush, for example, is also a member of Skull and Bones, where they have to be baptized in a coffin and bow down to the Pope and bow down to Satan and drink blood from a skull. People in power are doing this. It's insane. And then he's going to go and say, "Oh, I'm a Christian." It's he could have repented and been saved, but everything he did pushed us towards a New World Order. The war on terrorism, setting up the New World Order, eliminating freedoms.
When we take a look at the O, it is actually, occultically speaking, the shape of the Ouroboros, the snake that's going around in a circle, devouring itself. This O is actually the eye in this lady's face that they want to look at. This is the O. Now, what's in the center of this O? You take a good look. It is the exact same owl of the Illuminati.
So that's something too. I've done I did a video series on the Illuminati way back in the day, before I ever knew anything about technology. So it's kind of a haphazard video series. But my favorite part of it, if you can find it, it might be, it's because I was just I didn't know how to create lengthy videos, so it was back when I thought you could only upload 10 to 15 minute videos to YouTube. So it's broken up into 45 different parts. And somewhere in the middle there, somewhere around the late teens, 20s, if you just want to go and just jump into that, I go through all the different Illuminati symbols. Maybe I think we'll probably get into that, because there's so many, these corporations, the occult, they think there's power in this. They like to use the symbols on their products. So once you know the symbols, you can start to look around and see how many corporations are controlled by people involved in the occult. That's not a coincidence that the O on L'Oreal is bigger and that the owl's in the eye. They're doing that on purpose. It's not a coincidence that the Marlboro logo is the truncated pyramid with the all-seeing eye in it, or AOL using the all-seeing eye, or CBS using the all-seeing eye. Those aren't coincidences. Starbucks using the Babylonian goddess, Mystery Babylon. Things like that, and it's everywhere. Target using the symbol for Ra. It's Dodge using the Baphomet star with the goat head in the middle. So I think we'll probably do that one. I'll just have to find which one it is, because we won't go through the whole series.
That we saw on the back of the $1 bill.
It's crazy, though, how many corporations.
So the question then becomes, who
Part of
owns L'Oreal?
Exactly. Who owns it? Remember, the devil said the
But the
kingdoms of
owl
the
seems
world
to be
belong to
a
me.
major symbol for
I
the
give
secret
them to whom I
societies,
will.
as they are found repeatedly inside government buildings in Washington, D.C. And a giant owl figure is even seen in the street design, with the United States Capitol in the midst of it.
Now the Druids from the Gaelic means, Druid means men of oak. These people worshipped creation among other things, but their sacred symbol was the owl because the ancient god of magic and of the hunt was Pallas Athena. Her bird was the owl, and that owl represented wisdom and always has.
Pallas Athena was also the goddess figure who was said to inspire Sir Francis Bacon. But now look at this owl seal at the Bohemian Grove, where it says, "Weaving spiders come not here." While the line is taken from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, could this also be a veiled reference to what seems like a spiderweb design that forms the background of the dollar bill?
Dude, there's so much here. Like the web. What does a web do? It traps. The Bible talks about trap. The evil is a trap. Sin is a snare. Webs ensnare. The internet is called the World Wide Web. WWW is ensnare. There's so much to talk about with that as well. Or maybe I just covered it there. Yeah, in the back of the dollar, it's all covered in web.
Are there additional secrets hidden there?
Now, I'm sure you've heard of a Roshack smear or the Roshack Inkblot test as created by Dr. Roshack himself. You see the ink in the forefront and everything else is in the background. This way, your subconscious mind is supposed to pick up on what's on the foreground and you're supposed to be able to tell what you are subconsciously seeing. Notice how it's very busy. Lot of intersection diagonally lines, you can't make out what's there. But let's get rid of the background noise, get rid of all the diagonal lines that doesn't belong there, and let's reverse the principle of Rorschach and take what's in the background and bring it to the forefront and see what's there. Because once we do that, we find out it's quite obvious that there is another Illuminati owl and that it is perched on something that looks like an arrow. That is what they don't want you to see. Once you see this owl here and compare it to the other one on the left-hand side of it, it becomes very obvious that this is an owl. You can now begin to distinguish beyond all that busy signals and such that they don't want you to look through. Yet, they place there in honor of their totem bird, the Owl of Wisdom, which is the totem bird because their god, Lucifer, was supposed to have been the wisest of all of God's creation. Wisdom of Lucifer, wisdom into the bird, wisdom into the word Illuminati. Therefore, the chain of wisdom is followed all the way through.
All right, now, did they teach you this in the Illuminati?
Yes. Well, I want you to understand that the first symbol is known as a pentalpha, from the Greek word for five, pente. It is a five-pointed star. Now this next one is a pentacle. Now it looks similar, but I want you to notice how it is interwoven. It runs through and in between itself. Now this next symbol is what's known as the Star of David, the Mogan David, the Jewish Star, the Seal of Solomon. There's numbers for it. This is the symbol for the nation of Israel. Now, when you take a look at it very carefully, you will notice that it is two equilateral triangles that are interwoven. This shows the union of God with man. However, when you look at the next one, it's similar to it. It's known as a hexagon. This is when you take two equilateral triangles, place one on top of another. Symbolically speaking, you're placing man above God. Now, this next symbol is the foulest, the most evil of all symbols in the occult world. There is nothing that can even come close. It is known as the hexagram. It is the six-pointed star with a circle surrounding it. It is this symbol that must be used during high ceremonial magic or high ceremonial witchcraft when you are summoning up demons to this plane of existence.
The use of the hexagram is said by Doc to be very symbolic and seems to represent the occult concept of a Christ figure, just as the Maitreya was for Nicholas Roerich and Henry Wallace. But what Christ do they mean? Doc believes the pattern of hexagrams in the design of the dollar bill provides the clue.
If we take a look at the 13 stars directly above the head of the eagle and connect the dots, you will see where the very first hexagram is located. And if you notice that surrounding the hexagram is the 28 guidelines that make a circle. Now, inside every single point, the 6 points, is a star. There are 6 of them. They surround now the 7 stars.
I just thought of something too. I never, e pluribus unum, out of the many one. I never really thought about what that means, but that in itself is phrasing for a new world order. Out of the many nations, one world. E pluribus unum. Interesting.
Remember, 6 is the number of man, 7 is the number of God. Now, it is man that is surrounding God or is placed above God.
If what Doc is saying is true, this could represent the person the Bible calls the man of sin, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped. Doc's interpretation seems to also fit the worship of Lucifer.
Man, I hate pausing all this time. I apologize for that, but the man of sin, if you read the Reformers, is referring to popery. It's referring to the seat of the Pope, the head of the Roman Catholic institution. And I hold that position as well. I believe that if we're going to call something Antichrist, if we're going to call anybody the Antichrist, it's Pope. It's the Pope who says that he's the vicar of Christ, who sits in the throne of Christ, claim, just like Thessalonians says, the man of sin who opposeth all things, exalts himself above God. He sits in a throne, has people kiss his ring, sits on a throne with an upside down cross on the back. There's many antichrists, the scriptures say, so I believe that seat is held throughout all our generations by a representative antichrist. Now, whether or not there will be the antichrist, I think that makes sense. The devil's an imitator. God became man in Jesus Christ, so it makes sense that Satan will become man. But I believe that when that happens, it'll be in that seat of popery. Like, that's what that position is for. It's like a holding pattern. There's always a guy there that whenever that time occurs, Satan can take over that guy, and that is the Antichrist. But that seat is the seat of Antichrist. That's what the Reformers taught. It's what the Puritans taught, and it's what I believe. You know, if you go back and you read Martin Luther, John Calvin, Knox, Edwards, Spurgeon, any of those guys, Cotton Mather, any of those old timers, if you read their commentaries on the man of sin or the son of perdition, they're going to tell you it's popery. That it's the Roman Catholic institution is the Antichrist, is the whore of Babylon, and at its head position is that seat of Antichrist. Now, when the world comes together in this one world system, and a man, like somebody, and the devil possesses somebody to rule over that, it'll probably be whoever that current pope is at that time, or it'll be somebody that takes over that seat of popery, and through that seat will run the government and will bring all the world religions together into an ecumenical movement.
In the Bible, Lucifer declares that he will exalt his throne above the stars of God.
Interesting.
Next, Doc claims a second hexagram can be found by connecting the various points where the much talked about number 13 is represented.
And don't try to tell me it's the 13 colonies.
There are 13 stars above the eagle's head, 13 stripes in the shield, 13 leaves on the olive branch, 13 arrows in the eagle's talon, and then 13 letters in the phrase E pluribus unum, which makes for 2 points on either side of the eagle's head, for the 6 points total of the hexagram.
Well, if we take a close look at the same seal and connect all the 13s together, just like we did when we were kids, when we were playing that game, connect the dots. Once we connect all the 13s, it becomes very apparent where the second hexagram can be found. And this one, which is very obvious, already comes with a circle around it.
So this is the second hexagram here in figure 2.
Yes.
And then where's the third hexagram?
The third hexagram can be found on the other part of the Great Seal. Again, connect all the 13 together, the 13 letters, the 13 steps in the pyramid, connect all this together. And you'll note with the circle that's already there, it forms the third hexagram. In other words, a 6, and a 6. A 6, 6, 6.
Doc has deciphered a code that, if there, would glorify Lucifer's Messiah, whom the Bible calls the Beast or Antichrist. In the book of Revelation, it reads, "Here is wisdom. Let
The beast and Antichrist are not synonymous. A beast is a government. The book of Daniel says that a beast is a government. So when Revelation talks about the beast, it's talking about a world government. The Antichrist will be a person, probably the head of the beast system. The woman rides the beast in Revelation 17. There's a woman riding, controlling, guiding, and that's popery. That's Rome. You study Revelation 17, study the history of Rome, and it is crystal clear who that's talking about. So again, it all comes back to Rome, which I believe, again, is the head of this entire system, the Jesuits. Although there does seem to be conflict between the political branch and the religious branch. I don't know, that's just me theorizing. Like the Illuminati, that 13 families of the Illuminati are running the political sphere of this. Popery is running the religious sphere of this. And I don't know if there's... I think the way I read Revelation, it appears there's conflict between the two. But either way, it's going to be headed up by Lucifer. And it makes sense that he's going to come and be in human form at some point in time.
him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Could there really be 3 6-pointed hexagrams on the dollar bill?
Once we start at the base of the pyramid, which is the foundation of all things, and follow the design of the hexagram itself, you're going to find out something very startling. We go from the M and follow the symbol all the way up to the A. The A cuts directly underneath the eye of Lucifer all the way to the S. The S connects all the way down. It goes in between the V and the I, and connects all the way to the O, and following the symbol, the O connects up and over along the symbol of the hexagram to the word N. In perfect sequence, it's M-A-S-O-N, Mason. It's not what a lot of other people have espoused, that the symbol connects down to the M in seclorum and that the word is an anagram or something like that. Those people who are doing that obviously don't know what they're talking about, or they don't know how to plagiarize me correctly. Because the Order of the Illuminati have stated, and always will state, this is perfectly spelled out to be M-A-S-O-N, Mason. This points conclusively that the Masons have been involved in the Order of the Illuminati. This was back during the Council of Wilhelmsbad, which would have been July 16, 1782.
All right, so what are we seeing?
Now, if we look at the bottom one of the reverse side of the dollar bill, you'll see on the right-hand side that, again, there's a lot of busy intersecting diagonal lines. Yet, if we apply the same principle we just used to reveal the hidden hours of the Illuminati and apply it, we will find that there is now a skull-faced winged demon. And it is very obvious. Once you take away the background, the busy noise, it becomes very apparent what it is and that it's been there all along. And if we just simply go and enlarge that section, just start with a small one and just keep enlarging it and enlarge it even more, even with the background noise there, as I call it, I think it becomes very apparent what we are now looking at. That it is still a skull-faced winged demon. And it is these demons that are protecting and blessing the two great seals of the Order of the Illuminati. And it would make perfect sense that it had to be demons used to protect these seals, since I am convinced it was those same demons that handed them over to Thomas Jefferson when they first created them. I am convinced, beyond all doubt, that that indeed was a demon sent up from the bowels of hell, probably under the direct orders of Lucifer himself.
Doc Marquis makes it clear that he is no longer involved in the occult, and that since becoming a Christian, he has dedicated himself to warning others about the activities of the secret societies that worship Lucifer.
I've been doing this now since the late 70s, when I first left the Order of the Illuminati, and that's when at that point I had become a born-again Christian. At that time, I realized what I had been doing all along. Maybe in my own way of trying to make up for what I had done, and I've done a lot of heinous things in this life, I begin to wonder if I'm not trying to make up or atone for some of those things I had done. And I know in my heart of hearts that as a born-again child of the King, my sins have already been bought and paid for. But still, there's just that part of me that still feels so guilty about everything I've done. So it could be in my own way, and I'm somewhat convinced that in my own way, I'm still trying to make up for all those crimes I was guilty of when I was in the Illuminati.
Doc makes it clear that he believes demonic forces were behind the design of the dollar bill and are working through secret societies. One of them is the Order of the Eastern Star, the female chapter of Freemasonry. whose icon is an inverted pentagram, a symbol associated with the satanic goat of Mendes. Ed Decker told us a story about a woman he once counseled who was involved in this society.
I got a call one day after I had published a book on it, and a little book called The Question of Freemasonry. And in that book, I had, on one page, is the actual goat of Mendes.
The goat of Mendes is a very significant symbol, since it was designed by 19th century French magician Eliphas Levi, without question the most influential occultist of the last 200 years. In his books, Levi glorified Lucifer and Satan, and his writings were quoted extensively by every major occult leader, including Albert Pike, Madame H.P. Blavatsky, and Manly P. Hall. Now listen carefully to Ed Decker's story.
I got a call from someplace back in Pennsylvania, New Jersey. This is years ago. And a lady called me up and she said, I want to talk to you. She said, I received a copy of your book. I am the head of the Eastern Star for my state. And she said, every time I go to another area of the state to do the induction of the leadership of the local chapters of the Eastern Star, I have these bad dreams, and it's like this demon comes in and attacks me in my bedroom, and it's this evil, evil thing. And it was beginning to bother me, and someone mentioned to me that, you know, the Masons and the stuff that they do isn't really godly. You might want to study it a little bit. She said, so she told me that she went to a Christian bookstore and asked them if they had anything on the Eastern Star or Freemasonry. And the lady said, you know, in the mail, I had just gotten this booklet. It's called The Question of Freemasonry by this guy, Ed Decker. And she said, I opened the book, I opened it up to the page. It just opened to the page that you have the goat of Mendes on there. And I looked at that, and that's the demon that's been coming into my room and attacking me when I'm going around the state and doing the inductions of the ladies of the Eastern Star. She said, I ran down 3 blocks to my husband's office, left my car right in the parking lot of the Christian bookstore, ran down there, got my husband out of his, I think he was an insurance agent or something, and said, look at this. They left there, went home, read the book, got on their knees, confessed it as sin, renounced it, and had that thing taken off their back. And from that time on, all that heaviness left her. When it went away, it just moved off her entire spirit. It was a spirit of darkness and evil. And it was the goat of Mendes, the same thing that's on the Medal of Honor, the same thing that's built into the Capitol and the Mall and the White House, built in there. It's the same evil spirit.
Yeah, our military seems to be obsessed with that symbol. I know a pastor who was a military chaplain who came walking into a Bible study one time wearing his military outfit, and he had that big goat of Mendes on his I think it was like here, and yeah, just not good. Like I wasn't able to look at that guy in the same way anymore, you know. Not saying he's involved in it, perhaps he's just undiscerning, but there's a lot of occultism in this nation, you know, and in the military. I'm going to comment on something.
This whole idea of the Messiah and its relation, and the Messiah's relationship to the stone, and who that Messiah would be, and you know what would happen when the stone is returned to Jerusalem, and when the temple is built, it would be a replica of the original Solomon temple, not the Ezekiel, account. Which is what most Jews believe, the Ezekiel account. No Jews believe that the Solomon's temple is going to be rebuilt in that architectural style. But the Masons believe, if I understand them right, that when that stone finds its way to Jerusalem, it's one of the last items necessary, and that there are certain rabbinical orders to actually that I've met today that are anticipating its return. Once it returns, then they proceed with a blueprint to take the Temple Mount and put up what they consider to be the final temple that Ezekiel described. But the stone it's all pivotal upon the return of this stone, because Solomon brought that stone in the traditions and legends in Judaism into his original temple, and upon it the incense was burned in the fire pan.
According to Masonic author David Oveson, the word dollar comes from the German word Taler. While there are many Taler designs, one in particular is mentioned, with the image of Jesus Christ crucified on one side, while the reverse bears the image of a serpent on a cross and a reference to the book of Numbers from the Old Testament. In this account, the children of Israel had complained against God. The scripture says, "And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much of the people of Israel died." When they repented, God commanded Moses to erect a bronze serpent upon a pole, saying that everyone that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live. In the New Testament, Jesus made reference to the bronze serpent as a picture of his crucifixion. He said, "As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have eternal life." Some believe that the serpent cross is the original inspiration for the American dollar sign today. While the image of the bronze serpent holds a very particular meaning for Christianity, David Oveson explains that Kabbalists and alchemists find an interesting parallel in the Hebrew gematria. The Hebrew word for the serpent of Moses is Nakash, which means the shining one. The numerical gematria for Nakash is 358. This is also the numerical equivalent for the Hebrew word Mashiach, or Messiah. Oveson claims that these numerical equivalents allowed magicians to draw a connection between the brazen or bronze serpent and the Messiah. But exactly what Messiah do they mean? The phrase e pluribus unum, or out of many, one, appears in the banner held in the mouth of the American eagle. The word one appears a total of 7 times on the dollar bill. Oveson writes, "In magical numerology, the number 7 is regarded with a special veneration. Certain texts that deal with the meanings of numbers insist that 7 stands for the complete temple." The temple he refers to is the ancient temple of God, built by King Solomon in the city of Jerusalem. Oveson goes on to say that the concept of a complete temple is symbolized by the unfinished pyramid of the Great Seal, where the symbol of a Messiah figure is also shown with the all-seeing eye, representing the capstone that will one day complete the pyramid. In other words, when the Messiah emerges, then will the temple be complete. But just who this Messiah will be is the subject of intense debate, and the clues to his identity are said to be related to the temple itself. The site of Solomon's original temple at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is still considered a sacred and holy place.
Buildings are sacred in religions. Religious buildings are sacred. So Solomon's temple is sacred.
The Knights Templar were specifically named in reference to this ancient site. They were known as the Poor Knights of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon.
The Knights Templar lived on the Temple Mount. Today, the Temple Mount has on it the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Knights Templar had their headquarters in Al-Aqsa Mosque when they were there.
So the association between this arcane direction and tradition in Europe with the Knights Templar and the temple of the Temple Mount is direct.
The sacred nature of the temple was handed down from the Templars to the Freemasons, who are said to have originated from the ancient Knights. Masonic philosopher Albert Pike wrote that every Masonic lodge is a temple of religion. Another Masonic philosopher, Albert Mackey, wrote that of all the objects which constitute the Masonic science of symbolism, the most important, the most cherished by the Mason, and by far the most significant, is the Temple of Jerusalem. The spiritualizing of the temple is the first, the most prominent, and the most pervading of all the symbols of Freemasonry. Take from Freemasonry its dependence on the temple, and the system itself would at once decay and die. According to David Oveson, who is himself a Freemason, the dream of a rebuilt temple in Jerusalem is the true symbolism of the unfinished pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. But is it merely a coincidence that these symbols would end up on the foundation of America's currency? Is there a further connection with Solomon's Temple and the mysterious Knights Templar?
The Templars were there on the Mount. They lived on the Mount. So they were living a dream. And the dream is the same dream Christopher Columbus had and wrote about extensively in returning to Jerusalem with the gold from the Americas to build the temple.
Was this the true purpose of Columbus's voyage, to finance the rebuilding of Solomon's Temple? And was this desire handed down from the Templars to Columbus to modern Masonry? As we have shown before, the ships of Columbus sailed with a red cross on a white background, the symbol of the Knights Templar. But despite the interest of Templars and Freemasons, the original temple begins with the Jewish people.
The temple was critical to Judaism. It was the heart of Judaism.
The first Jewish temple, built by King Solomon, was destroyed by the Babylonians in 587 BC.
The temple became a necessity for the existence of Judaism. So when it was destroyed, the longing for another temple in the Babylonian exile was, primary.
The foundation for a second temple was laid by Zerubbabel when the first Jews returned from their captivity in ancient Babylon.
First thing, when Jews are able to return, they build a temple. There's Zerubbabel and Ezra and Nehemiah come together. There's a temple built. It's added onto over the centuries until you end up with Herod's temple.
This second temple was in existence during the time of Christ and the apostles. But it would also be destroyed, a terrible event that Jesus himself had prophesied. The scripture says that the disciples came to show Jesus the buildings of the temple, and Jesus said unto them, See ye not all of these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down.
It's interesting that chapter in Matthew is to do with end times, and it centers around the temple. I never put that together before.
And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that its desolation is nigh. And so it came to pass that the second temple was destroyed with the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Yet in the aftermath of its terrible destruction would emerge the dream for a third temple, and what some believe will be the final temple of all time.
This arcane connection to Freemasonry has its roots in the longing for the temple, the longing for the final temple, for the ultimate temple where Hagoyim, where non-Jews pray with Jews, as the old books, the last old books of the Old Testament predict will happen. When does that temple get built?
The idea of a final temple is shared both by Jewish leaders and the Freemasons. Yet the two groups disagree on exactly what the final temple would be.
There is a common history here and a common longing. They'll never end up with the same temple. Jewish wishes for the final temple really don't resemble what Masons want to have built on the Temple Mount, which is a replica of Solomon's temple.
With their mysterious rituals and secret practices, the Masons are often accused of intoxicating the world, making it drunk with ideas of a new age and a new world order, all of which are engineered toward the fulfillment of the new Atlantis envisioned by Sir Francis Bacon. Could it be that this is what lies behind the concept of a third and final temple?
It, to me, makes perfect sense that the new Atlantis, as understood in the Baconian tradition, involves the final temple, the spiritual headquarters, if you will, of the new Atlantis. The idea of that temple is central to Freemasonry, the Knights Templar, and of this there is no doubt. They've all expressed it. All these arcane societies have let it be known that this is really ultimately a central goal. They seem to all gravitate toward there being a temple, a need for a temple, except Orthodox Muslims who say, no, we're the last religion. These buildings are fine, thank you very much. Become a Muslim and you can pray in them and hang out on the Temple Mount, which is not going to happen. So that leads to a pretty ugly likelihood. If people who want a temple get their way, there's going to be a bloodbath there.
Also, which we're going to look into as well. There's something called the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, which is both very revealing but also deceptive. It's a clever smokescreen to smokescreens hide the truth like behind this veil. So you'll have a lot of truth spoken, but then it points you in the wrong direction. So the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion reveals a lot. It might even reveal the entire plot of the New World Order, but it frames the Jews as the culprits. So it's an anti-Judaism and anti. Well, it's presented as pro-Israel. It's presented as, hey, we are Jews writing this letter. We have a great plan for the New World Order. But anybody, again, that's why you have to have biblical understanding. Otherwise, you're going to come across stuff like that, and you're going to say, it's the Jews behind it all, and you become an anti-Semite. And it's not the Jews. It's the demonic principalities and powers and controlling the rich, elite, powerful of all tribes, tongues, and nations. Some of them are Jews, some are Gentiles. It has nothing to do with Judaism. It's not a Jewish conspiracy. It's an elite, satanic conspiracy. But that letter talks about 3 world wars, and supposedly it was written like in the 1800s, before World Wars I and II. And it talks about the 3rd World War being a Palestinian war between Israel and the Arabs. And so it's very interesting that seems to be like the seat of conflict in this world. Like I heard it said that the UN focuses more on that little tiny section. What is Israel, like the size of Delaware? And it gets all the attention of the world on it. Again, that's scriptural. It says that, what does the Bible say? That Israel would be a cup of trembling to the nations. Like, that it's a seat of conflict. So, according to the letters of the protocols, there will be a 3rd World War between Israel and the Arab nations. And it seems like something like that would be the catalyst to create the New World Order. Because out of that would come this world system saying, look, And so that makes sense why the UN would be so focused on that as well.
I believe it's spiritual because Satan has always desired God's place. That's why in Masonry you have Jebulon right there on the altar, Baal, the ruler of demons, in the Masonic altar. And Masons are generally, obviously, being deceived. However, right there on the Temple Mount in Israel, you have the Dome of the Rock, and the Golden Dome, the Black Dome, and within these domes you have statements right there on Israel's Temple Mount, statements that Allah is God, and Allah has no, or God has no son, and Muhammad's his prophet, a denial of the true God and his son, Jesus Christ. And again, that's what 1 John identifies as being the spirit of Antichrist, those that deny the Father and the Son, 1 John chapter 2. And that's a harbinger of the ultimate Antichrist to come, who's going to sit in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So isn't it interesting? Here we have Benjamin Krim speaking of a coming Maitreya, who will rule as the coming Imam Mahdi of Islam. Of course, he can't really rule, and there can't be world peace unless the Jews, in his mind, are annihilated. And by the way, according to Muslim teachings in the Hadiths, when the Imam Mahdi comes, or when the Messiah comes, he will destroy the Jews and the people of the cross. So all of this stuff, incredibly, it fits together just too well. But praise God, because from my perspective as a Christian, Jesus Christ said, when you see these things beginning to take place, lift up your head, for redemption is drawing near. And I believe these are signs that Jesus Christ is coming again. And when he does come, he will defeat the Antichrist, and every knee will bow, and every tongue confess, including Benjamin Krim, including the leaders of Iran and Hezbollah and so forth. Whether it's in heaven or on earth or in hell, every knee will bow, declaring that Jesus Christ is Lord in the end.
And what will all these things mean for the future destiny of America? According to David Oveson, it was Manly Hall who influenced the placement of 72 stones on the Great Pyramid of the dollar bill, since the number 72 is said to be a magical number in the occult. It was also Hall who taught that the American eagle was a cleverly disguised phoenix bird. In his writings, he documents this account from the 1st century AD. There is a certain bird which is called a phoenix, and when the time of its dissolution draws near that it must die, it builds itself a nest. But as the flesh decays, a certain kind of worm is produced. According to this account, it is from this worm that the phoenix is reborn. This concept of a phoenix worm in its nest seems to be represented at the top of this column on a building found in Europe. But in Washington, D.C., up at the tops of the 72 columns of the National Archives building, we find nearly identical carvings, all perched beneath the throne of destiny itself. Could this somehow be a veiled reference to the secret destiny of America? Watching the strength of the American dollar decline, we consider America's founder, George Washington. Around his image on the face of the dollar is said to be an omega symbol, signifying the end. But what end? Many researchers have come to believe that the plan of these Luciferian societies is that, like the phoenix of old, the America that we know will ultimately be destroyed, and that from her ashes will be born a new world order.
Yeah, that's what I think. Well, there we go. All right, so that wraps up our three-part Chris Pinto series, America's Secret Beginnings. Like he said at the end there, that's kind of my position when I try to think it through. Like, what is America? What is the destiny of America, so to speak? And I've often thought, like, Satan uses America, uses its might, its prosperity, to establish this worldwide empire, to set it up, and then America's no longer needed. So it would seem like the destruction of America will then give birth to the New World Order. But who knows? That part's unknown. That's the Lord's business. Yeah, it's interesting times we live in, like all these things coming together. And again, I don't know when the end is. The Lord could delay it for a long, long, long time. But it would seem like things are occurring in our lifetime. It would seem like all these things are are culminating, in this generation. But anyways, I do have that Hidden Faith of our Founding Fathers DVD, so we'll watch that one next. Like I say, this original series Pinto did was a 3-parter, and then this 4th disc kind of follows up on this, but it's in response to another teaching that was out there that claimed that America's foundation was a Christian foundation, so he's kind of combating that and showing the evidence against that. So we'll watch that one. And then after that, we've got, I'm not even sure what we got. A couple more on America, I think. And then we're going to move into 9/11 will be the next one. Why 9/11? Because I feel like that was just kind of a trigger event that really escalated the movement towards the New World Order. I feel like it quickened the events, and it was the wake-up moment for me. It was the moment where the whole thing kind of crystallized for me, and I saw the scheme behind it. So I think it's very important once we expose that and see how governments use crises to obtain their objectives. They have these New World Order objectives, and people are inherently going to be opposed to it because people want to hold on to their freedom, their autonomy, their national sovereignty. So in order to get people to buy into it and to give up freedoms, they create crisis and scare people, and then say, hey, the only way out of this is to do this. Like the biggest example of that is 9/11. So like, at least in my lifetime. So using those 9/11 videos, like, to show how they do that, how they manufacture crisis and then offer up a solution that moves us one step closer to the New World Order. But anyways, we'll wrap up. So I appreciate you guys watching. I love you. Lord willing, we'll talk to you next time.